morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of the Palazzo Vecchio as Lorenzo contemplated the challenge before him. At 28, he had inherited his family's merchant empire, but inheritance alone would not command the respect of Florence's most powerful families. The Medici, the Pazzi, and other influential houses viewed him as an inexperienced upstart. Despite his bloodline, he needed something more than birthright. He needed the wisdom that transforms ordinary men into forces of nature. It was then that fate intervened in the form of an aging scholar named Alessandro, who claimed to possess manuscripts containing the lost teachings of Niccolo Machiavelli himself. These weren't the sanitized lessons found in The Prince, but the raw, unfiltered strategies that Machiavelli had whispered to his most trusted confidants during the turbulent years of Italian politics. Alessandro had spent decades collecting these fragments, studying them, and testing their effectiveness in the shadows of European courts. "Young Lorenzo," Alessandro said as they met in his candlelit study filled with ancient texts and mathematical instruments, "respect is not given. It is taken, but it must be taken with such precision and intelligence that others believe they are giving it willingly. This is the art that separates true leaders from mere pretenders." Alessandro opened the first manuscript, its yellowed pages crackling like autumn leaves. Machiavelli understood that predictable men are disposable men. When others can anticipate your every move, you become a tool in their hands rather than a force they must reckon with. He pointed to a passage written in Machiavelli's own hand. "A prince must be like both the fox and the lion, cunning when strength fails, fierce when cunning is insufficient." Lorenzo listened intently as Alessandro explained how controlled unpredictability differs from mere chaos. "Consider how Cardinal Borgia would arrive at negotiations," the scholar continued. "Sometimes he appeared in simple robes, speaking softly of mercy and understanding. Other times he would enter in full ceremonial dress, his voice echoing through stone halls like thunder. His opponents never knew which version they would encounter, and this uncertainty gave him tremendous psychological leverage. The key," Alessandro explained, "lay in the word controlled. Unpredictability without purpose is madness, but unpredictability with strategic intent becomes a weapon that cuts through complacency and forces others to pay attention." When Lorenzo de' Medici wanted to secure a trade agreement with the merchants of Venice, Alessandro recounted, he first spent months establishing a reputation for meticulous punctuality. Every meeting, every social gathering, he arrived exactly on time. The Venetians began to see him as reliable but unremarkable. Then came the crucial negotiation. Instead of arriving at the appointed hour, Lorenzo arrived 3 hours early, catching the Venetian delegation unprepared. When they protested, he simply smiled and said, "I thought we might accomplish more if we started when we were fresh rather than when we were expected." This single act of controlled unpredictability shifted the entire dynamic. The Venetians, accustomed to controlling the pace of negotiations, found themselves responding to his initiative rather than executing their own strategy. Lorenzo found himself fascinated by this concept. But how does one maintain such unpredictability without appearing unstable or unreliable, he asked. Alessandro's eyes gleamed with the wisdom of years spent studying human nature. The secret lies in being unpredictable in your methods while remaining absolutely consistent in your core values and ultimate objectives. People must never doubt your integrity or your commitment to your word, but they should never be certain how you will achieve your goals. He shared another example from Machiavelli's observations of Cesare Borgia. Cesare was known for his word being unbreakable. When he made a promise, he kept it, regardless of personal cost. But the manner in which he kept his promises varied dramatically. Sometimes he would fulfill an obligation through direct action, other times through intricate political maneuvering, and occasionally through what appeared to be sheer luck but was actually careful planning. His allies learned to trust his commitment while his enemies learned to fear his creativity. The practical application of this principle, Alessandro explained, involves several specific techniques. First, vary your communication style based on strategic need rather than comfort. If people expect you to be direct, Occasionally speak in metaphors and analogies that force them to think deeper. If they anticipate emotional appeals, present cold logic and hard facts. This keeps others mentally engaged and prevents them from dismissing your words before you've spoken them. Second, alter your timing in ways that serve your objectives. Most people operate on predictable schedules. They arrive when expected, speak when it's their turn, and make decisions when pressure mounts. By shifting these temporal expectations, you can create moments of advantage. Arrive early to important meetings and use the extra time to arrange the physical space to your benefit. Speak first in some situations and last in others, depending on whether you want to frame the discussion or provide the final word. Third, change your physical presence strategically. Sometimes occupy space boldly, using gestures and movement to command attention. Other times, remain perfectly still and let others fill the silence with their own nervous energy. The Roman senators who opposed Caesar made the mistake of always reacting to his presence in the same way, with bluster and theatrical outrage. This predictability allowed Caesar to manipulate their responses and ultimately outmaneuver them. Alessandro emphasized that controlled unpredictability must be practiced gradually. Start with low-stakes situations, he advised Lorenzo. Practice varying your approach to routine business dealings. Observe how people respond when you deviate from their expectations. Learn to read the signs of when unpredictability creates beneficial tension versus counterproductive confusion. The second principle, strategic information management. As evening approached, Alessandro lit additional candles and opened a second manuscript. Information is the currency of respect, he began, his voice taking on a more serious tone. But most people approach information like peasants approach coins. They either hoard it jealously or spend it carelessly. Machiavelli understood that true power comes from knowing when to reveal, when to conceal, and when to deploy information as a weapon. The manuscript detailed Machiavelli's observations of how successful leaders manage the flow of information around them. Consider the case of Francesco Sforza, Alessandro continued. When he sought to claim the Duchy of Milan, he faced opposition from families who questioned both his legitimacy and his capabilities. Rather than argue his case publicly or attempt to overwhelm opponents with evidence of his worthiness, Sforza employed what Machiavelli called strategic revelation. Lorenzo leaned forward as Alessandro explained this technique. Sforza began by quietly gathering detailed information about the financial dealings, personal relationships, and secret ambitions of every major player in Milanese politics. But instead of using this information to attack or blackmail, tactics that would have marked him as a dangerous enemy, he used it to demonstrate his knowledge and understanding. In private conversations with individual nobles, Alessandro explained, Sforza would casually mention details about their business ventures, their family concerns, or their political aspirations, not in a threatening way, but with the tone of someone who truly understood their situation. This served two purposes. It demonstrated that he possessed extensive intelligence networks, and it showed that he chose to use this knowledge constructively rather than destructively. The psychological impact was profound. The nobles realized that Sforza knew their secrets but chose to engage with them as allies rather than adversaries. This created a sense of debt and obligation. They felt grateful that he had not exposed their vulnerabilities, even though he had never explicitly threatened to do so. When people believe you could destroy them but choose instead to work with them, Alessandro noted, they develop a form of respect that borders on reverence. But strategic information management involves more than just gathering and selectively revealing intelligence about others. It also requires careful curation of what information you allow others to gather about yourself. Machiavelli observed that